All right, today we're in a new setting and we're actually at my desk, which I've never filmed here before because I wanted to film the very first video of this series where I review all of my numbers at the end of the month, all of my expenses, my income, and then profit. So I really want to share these because I already do this every month. I use a spreadsheet to track my income and my profit from gig work at the end of every month, and that just makes everything so much easier come tax time at the end of the year and the beginning of the following year. And also, I just like to have an eye on my numbers every month. I just like having that peace of mind and knowledge, even if it wasn't helping me logistically. But the bonus is this literally makes your life so easy at the end of the year. So I could not recommend doing this enough. Tracking all the numbers is very important. I believe in tracking things just in general. I also do have a personal finance spreadsheet where that's a separate thing where I just track just my overall personal spending, how much money I'm bringing in every month with all of my income streams, my expenses as far as my rent, my groceries, my utilities, discretionary spending, eating out, all the things that we all spend money on. I also track that on a separate document and I review that at the end of each month to make sure that I'm keeping up on my savings goals and I'm not letting those kind of slip away. For this video, this is just going to be the business expense tracking. So if you're curious to kind of see how that's been going, I am going to show the data from previous months because I am starting this now in July. So we are going to be reviewing June's numbers today. And I'm going to show the previous month's numbers just really briefly. Since I'm starting now, I might as well just show it. So if that's something that interests you, definitely stick around for the rest of the video and you'll want to see how my numbers have changed over time and kind of what my move forward plan is and what my goals are for gig work. Okay, so here we are inside of my tracker. So I do have 3 tabs. We have income, expenses, and summary just to make it easiest. And this is a very simple spreadsheet because I didn't want to clog it up with a bunch of different charts and graphs going on. At least to me, I like it to be as simple as possible while still showing you the result it needs to show you. So it's pretty simple, which also means it's very easy to set up and use. So we have income spreadsheet at the top. I did go ahead and add several different gig apps to the spreadsheet, even though I don't currently use them all, because who knows what will change and I might end up adding or taking away apps as I go. So I do have DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Grubhub under the food delivery category. And then under grocery shopping, we have Instacart and Walmart Spark. And then catering, we have Zifty and Deliver That. And then package delivery, we have Amazon Flex and Roadie. So definitely let me know if I missed one. I think these are all the main platforms that most people use or anything that I think I could be getting on in the future. But I can always add to this if necessary. I think the categories is easy to divide them up and it makes it easier to see how much you're making per category. So just delivering food versus grocery shopping, you can compare kind of the profitability of those different types of gig work. So that's why I like to have them separated by category type. So just to review June's numbers. So there are a lot of numbers on the screen now since I'm just now starting in June. But let's look at these numbers. So I have already inputted my numbers for June. And as you can see, I did the majority of my earnings on Instacart, which if you can also look back at the historical data is true. That's ever since I got Instacart, it has taken over as my main income source. But just like everything with this kind of work, it varies a lot. So if you add up Uber and DoorDash, it's actually pretty neck and neck with Instacart in the month of June. But you can see that's not the case whatsoever in the previous months where Instacart consistently takes the cake for the earnings. So that's been my most powerful new, well, it's been since November of last year, so it's not very new. But compared to DoorDash and Uber that I've been doing for years, Instacart has been the biggest game changer as far as my profitability and just my earnings potential with gig work. So as you can see, the total here at the bottom, all of the formulas are preset in this entire thing. So as soon as you input your income, and I'll show on the next few tabs too, it just totals everything for you. So as you can see in the month of June, my income was at $4,188.43, which is amazing and it's perfectly on target. I have mentioned in some of my other ride-along videos that my goal is to make $1,000 a week. So that would be $4,000 a month in income. So I'm right on target for the month of June, which is exactly what we want to see. And to quickly review the previous months, you can see that I had a huge dip in April, and that was the month that we moved. And I also got sick at the beginning of the month. So I knew that month was going to dip down pretty significantly between missing work due to illness and then also moving and not having as much time to work. So given the situation, I'm very happy that I still stayed at about $3,000 when my typical is right around $4,000. And it's also very nice the past 2 months before that, in February and in March, I actually was a good amount over my goal. I was at about $5,000, which is amazing. And $5,000 sounds a lot better than $4,000. I kind of want to push my goal up to $5,000 a month just because it sounds like a lot more, which is kind of silly, but at least right now I'm totally happy if I'm doing $4,000 a month in income. But seeing these 2 months where I did either almost hit or hit $5,000, it does make me think that I can kind of push myself a little bit further and kind of try to aim more towards that. Okay, so now that we've reviewed the income, it's a pretty straightforward, this is the easiest sheet out of all of them. So let's go to the expenses. On the expenses sheet, we do also have things broken up by category. So I have vehicle operation, tips, supplies, business admin, and music, because you always want to have an extra category at the end. This also just makes it easy to see categorically where your expenses are going. So first, vehicle operation is going to be the biggest one. I have business miles driven, which I use Everlance, and I've used them ever since I started doing gig work, and I've been very happy with it. They track all of your business miles driven, and you can categorize your trips by purpose. So if you obviously drive for personal reasons, you just categorize it that way and it won't count it towards your business deductions. And they just use the standard business mileage rate and multiply it by the amount of miles you drove for that month, let's say, and they give you a dollar amount. So that's where this dollar amount is coming from that you're seeing here. Is Everlance will just give you a number at the end of every month as long as all of your trips are classified, and that's what your business deduction is for operating your vehicle. So it's very easy. It literally just spits out the number for you. And that's why I like it, because it's just so straightforward. So in the month of June, $881 was my deduction for business miles driven. And that is just the amount of miles that I drove times the current business mileage deduction rate. That's all that number is. Now, I also have Business Miles Tracker subscription in case you want to separate this. I don't separate it. I was kind of thinking about it moving forward though. So this is just how much the actual app costs to subscribe to. So what I did is in the month of May, I believe my subscription renewed, and I just added that to this category. So I hope that makes sense. So I use Everlance, but whatever app you use to track your business miles, most of them are all paid subscriptions. I pay for mine annually because it's cheaper. So once a year, it will come out as one big charge instead of charging me every month. So I might actually, moving forward, separate this out, and I could even adjust it. I might go back and honestly edit this because I know I added it in the month of May, and that's why this number is higher. I want to say it's about $70 to $80 a year, which is very much well worth it. So if you wanted to, I could, for example, go back and check how much it was exactly and subtract that number out from here and put it here. So let's say it was $80 and the charge came out in May. I could separate that so I know that's how much my subscription costs and it wasn't part of my business miles driven, which now that I'm looking at this, that's probably a better idea. So I will go ahead and update that. Parking fees and tolls, these are the, as far as my knowledge, the only separate vehicle expenses you can deduct if you're using the standard business mileage rate and you're not itemizing your expenses for vehicle costs. But don't quote me on that because I'm not a tax professional. This is just what I found from my own research. And I do live in about a high-rise building in downtown, which means parking is very expensive and it does make me cringe every month, but this is what we have to do. So I pay $125 a month to park my car. And in the month of May, I actually bought a second car exclusively to use for gig work. And that's why I am putting this expense in the entire amount in these months. So that's why this is a parking spot solely used for my gig work car. So the entire parking expense is going towards a deduction. That's why these are at $125. Now let's get to tips. So this is the best part, right? So everything is also categorized the exact same way. So it's copy and pasted from the income tab to make it easy. They're all in the same order. So all tips for right now, this is just present time, tips are deductible from your taxable income up to $25,000 per year. So you need to be tracking very precisely what your tips are compared to your income from the actual platform so that you're not paying taxes on those. And this is a very, very important step. So we have by categories, you can see these are all of my tips that I received. So for the month of June, it was about $800 on DoorDash, about $600 on Uber Eats. Grubhub, I did nothing, so I have no tips. And then about $1,700 on Instacart. So if you want to toggle really quickly, just looking at these, or I guess just looking at these numbers right here, if you want to go back to your income tab and look at how close those numbers are, it's showing you how big of a percentage the tips are, which is why I also say that this work is incredible opportunity to take advantage of right now while those tips are deductible. So you'll see the majority of the earnings are pretty much tips. So those are deducted under the expenses tab, even though they're not a true expense. And that was all the platforms that I did. I currently don't have these other platforms right now, so those are all blank. And then the supplies category, so far this year I haven't bought any supplies in this category, so it's empty right now. But if I bought insulated bags, I'd put them here. Your phone bill you can deduct. I also have a first phone and a second phone because I know a lot of people have two phones, especially if they're doing Instacart or Walmart Spark. And then I have it separated out for accessories. You can deduct the cost if you're buying chargers and car mounts for your car. And you can also deduct PPE. So if you're buying hand sanitizer, which is mostly my big thing, I go through so much of that because I'm constantly using it while I'm out doing deliveries because I'm afraid of getting sick. And I have been getting sick a lot more since I started doing this work because, you know, you're constantly out touching things. So you can actually deduct the cost of that because you're directly using it for business. And then business admin, I just have tax filing and a CPA if you use one. There's other categories that you could add to this if you wanted to, but these are just what I do. So the only thing I have filled out right now is just how much it costs to file my taxes in April, and you can deduct the actual cost to file your taxes. And that's because it's self-employment. It does have a decent fee associated with filing those. And then if you use a CPA, you can obviously put it here. And then Mizik, you can add anything you want here. I have car because this is the month in May. This is the month in May where I did actually buy a separate vehicle to exclusively use for gig work, and that was just the cost of the vehicle. This is also kind of the best part of the sheet that I really love because it's just so easy to track. So at the bottom, you are gonna see your totals. These are all of your total expenses and they add them up per month. So very easy just to see what your total expenses were for that month. And this is very important. So given the new law that has been passed with deducting tips, you wanna make sure you're tracking your tips very diligently. So I have this in here that's just a very easy visual to see where I'm at. So this line right here is actually totaling what my tips are. So every month when I go in and do my spreadsheet, it will auto total how many tips, how much I'm at in tips for the year. So I see how close I'm getting to the limit. And I have this here as a reminder. Tips are no longer deductible after $25,000. So here's your limit. And then this chart also automatically takes this data over. This is how many tips I've received so far during the year. And then this is the amount left to the max. And that's what this chart is also showing. So if you don't even want to read any of this, all of this auto populates when you put in your expenses and the totals. So if you want to just look at this chart really quick, it gives you a nice visual on where you're at. And so I'm 78% of the way to the limit, which means as soon as it hits this $25,000 limit, the circle will be completed. And then once I see that circle is at 100%, I can no longer put tips in these categories as expenses. And that for me has just been the easiest way to visualize this, and just watch how the circle is filling. And then once it hits 100, then this tip category will all be empty for whenever that happens during the year. So that's the expenses category and where I'm at with my expenses. So in June, my expenses totaled $4,240. And if we go back to the income tab, I was at $4,188.43. So as you can see, my expenses actually exceeded my earnings, which means I'm going to be in the negative for profit. And that is solely due to all the tips being deductible when obviously these are not actual expenses. So that's why it's going to look like this on the summary sheet. So Let me explain because this is gonna look very confusing. The summary sheet is pretty simple. It does auto-populate all of your profit. So these numbers are going to auto-calculate for you and it'll tell you what your profit is every month. And then I like to separate it quarterly because if you're self-employed, you have to pay estimated taxes, which is super annoying. So at the end of each quarter, you should have a rough estimate, doesn't have to be perfect, of your profit and then therefore the taxes you owe on that so you don't get penalized. So this will auto-calculate your profit for the quarter and then your taxes that are estimated to be due on that profit per quarter. And it's calculating this automatically with the tax rate and you can change this number. So I have mine at 29% right now. It doesn't have to be a perfect calculation, but you wanna get pretty close. So that's what mine is here. And if you change this number, then the sheet will change. So if I wanna put 25% here, you can see it's gonna auto-calculate to that. So I'm just gonna put it back up to 29 and you'll see the numbers will automatically change. And I also like to add the estimated tax due dates just to keep it on this sheet and keep it fresh in my mind. And then I also track my estimated taxes paid, what date and the amount. So I can see kind of where I'm at and see if I'm on track because you don't wanna get hit at the end of the year with a giant tax bill. It just makes everything so much more of a headache and keeping track of it like this just gets it out of your mind and you don't have to worry anymore. And at the very bottom, it will total your estimated taxes due this year. So, and then this chart is a quick, just quarterly profit tracker. So you can see how your profit is looking over the quarters. And what's very interesting about this is, as you can see right now, it is in the negative for Q2. But what you'll see is later in the year when I continue to do these update videos, because the tips are no longer gonna be deductible pretty shortly, probably in about a month, then the profit's gonna skyrocket way up in this chart because I'm no longer deducting the tips. So the profit is more of like an actual true profit, not just taking advantage of the benefit of not having to pay tax on tips, if that makes sense. So you will see that reflected later in the year. So as you can see right now, I'm only at about $800 profit for the quarter for Q1, and I'm actually negative almost $3,000 for Q2, and that's because I purchased the car. As you can see, I did already pay $700 in estimated taxes. I did overpay because what I'm doing is front loading my tax payments so that by the end of the year, I don't get stuck with a $1,000 tax bill, because towards the end of the year is when your tips are no longer gonna be deductible. So you're gonna see your tax responsibility go up significantly. So that's why I kind of like to front load it a little bit. And as you can see, I am significantly over what I would do. I'm literally in the negative because of my profit here. That is just going to save me once Q4 especially hits and none of those tips are deductible, then my profit and my taxes are gonna go up significantly. So that's gonna help me out there that I kind of front loaded that. So that is the overview of the sheet that I've been using and where I'm at for the month of June. This month of June, I was at negative $52. That's why being able to deduct the tips literally makes it so that you're profiting, right, on paper, very, very little per month. As you can see, the biggest month was $400 profit in 1 month when my revenue coming in is over $4,000. So that shows you the huge disparity that's created just because of the tip income. So I hope this spreadsheet kind of helps you see a little bit more visually what's going on with how to track your true profit for this type of work. And I do this at the end of every month. So yes, this video is going up super late. This is a June review and I'm posting it at the end of July because I was sick all the beginning of July. So that's also gonna be interesting because next month when I post this video with July's numbers, they're gonna be pretty low because I missed a lot of work in the beginning of the month. But I wanted to at least start out with showing how June went and kind of showing you how I keep track of these numbers, and then we can kind of track it over time. And it's fun to look and see how your income kind of goes up and down. Logistically, it helps you immensely for tax prep. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will be posting this as a series, so it will be a once a month video that is a monthly overview of all my income, expenses, and then profit from gig work. You can see the real numbers of what's going on while I'm out there on the road and see what it actually comes down to at the end of the month. So if you enjoy these types of videos, watching me do gig work and just money tips in general, definitely subscribe because that's what I talk about on this channel. And I hope to see you in my next video.